Finally, as a user perspective, if a user has a court and they want to harmonize their information and make it discoverable through the atlas, what should they do? So the user would access first this website in which we have an Excel template, and this is the file that the user will complete and will send to us. This Excel template is very simple. It has 3 tabs: instructions, metadata, and terminology. Instructions is just a description of what's in the other 2 tabs. Metadata, we are updating this file, and we have added new terms. These are what we call the descriptors. So in here, the user would add general information of the court, a description, a website, the PI name, and so on, and then some specific information about the amount of data they have. So these are the descriptors, and on the 3rd tab, we have the terminology. In this tab is where the court owner would provide the data dictionary. So the terms of age, sex, alcohol, whichever terms they have in their data dictionary, they will add them here. Why we do differentiate between these 2? Because, for instance, we have that they have to add if they have genomic data here, and they can have, of course, a term that describes genomic data. The thing is that we in here, as you have seen on the atlas, we want to add percentages. And we have seen that it's very important to know not only if the court have this data, but which amount of this data is in the court. So if a court has 10,000 participants, we can ask them, okay, or they can have in their data dictionary, genomic data is there. So in the atlas, it will appear as if they have genomic data, but it can happen that a court of 10,000 participants, maybe it's at the beginning of the project, and they have only genomic data for 500 participants. And the users can access the atlas, see that this court has genomic data, and maybe for their research, they need data from 3,000 participants. So they would do all the steps to access in the end the data. They would contact the court. They would maybe get the data access permissions and so on. And in the end, they only have a small amount of this genomic data, and they cannot perform the assays that research that they wanted to do. So what we did is that we asked the courts to provide, this is a drop-down list, so percentages of the different types of data that are we consider most important. So as you have seen, you would see that for that court in the atlas, that court has 50% to 75% of genomic data. So you know that for the amount of participants that they have in the court, they have this percentage of that data type, for instance. So this is very helpful for the researchers. So the court owner, the user, would fill in this information, for instance, in this way. This is an example. They would provide different terms. They can add a definition, and this is all they would provide to us. So, of course, this would be a big list. And then the data dictionary owner would send this Excel file to this address, and this would create a request. We would get this request. We would check it. We would check that the Excel file is filled in correctly, and then we would do the process for mapping to Gecko. We use a workflow that is called Droid, that I will show you now, and it's just different steps that we need to do in order to do this Gecko mapping. After doing this, we create a Google Sheet that is shared with the data dictionary owner. In this Google Sheet, we create the correspondence between the data dictionary terms and the Gecko terms. So the data dictionary owner can check that the suggestions by the Gecko are correct, and they can also change them. So that we have a good relation between the ontology and the terms of the data dictionary. And then this is what would be updated, uploaded later into the OLS. And so this is what they would send to us, and this is what we would share with the user. This is after it has been processed. You have some ID. These are the terms to be harmonized, and this is the suggestions from the Gecko. And in here we have the confidence of the Gecko. So there are some terms that the confidence is like 100%. This from other ontologies, and they suggest this term, the pato for visual sex for sex. And then the user would check this, and would, if something is wrong, they would open this drop-down list and then select whichever term is the best for this label. And then we would upload this information once it's in the OLS. The OICR team that is in Canada would get this information from the GitHub and upload it into the Court Atlas. So now you still see my screen, right?
Yes, we see the slide. So there's a question from Christian to say, it seems you're using a tabular spreadsheet to curate the metadata. Is there any scope in the project to store and annotate metadata in a fully specified common metadata model like CDISC ODM?
So this tabular spreadsheet is only when we are in contact with the submitter, and then what's stored is this OL file that is the one that is in the OLS. So we will keep the original spreadsheet also, but the really useful information is this OL file that has been generated.
So you can basically export from there, so they could export from their model to the spreadsheet, and then that goes into an OLS format.
Yes.
Where it goes into the Atlas. Okay, so I don't know, Nick, Christian, if you wanted to have a follow-up question, if that answered your question. You can just unmute rather than have to type. We can't hear you for some reason.
Is the metadata machine readable? Yes, if you, so I will show you now the process, and the different steps. So we will have the Excel file is transferred to a Google Sheet, in fact, and from this is the way that we work. The Gecko will make these suggestions, and then this OL file is generated. Okay, well, so I will go on, and if you need more clarification, just let me know. Okay, so this would this would be a file that any user would have downloaded, and I already filled it in, but you can see here. You see the whole the Excel file, right?
Yes, we see the Excel file on top of your other screen. Yeah.
So this is just a description of the other tabs. In here, the data dictionary owner, they would add certain information, the Scott ID, the website, and other things. And is this? We only collected this data before, and now this is for the test instance, so this has not been updated. But now we have this other metadata tab that I have shown you that in which we collect more information because we need this specific information to quantify the amount of the data types that the core has. And then in here, the user would add the data dictionary. So they would add height, birthday, and whichever things. In here, I added, for instance, tobacco and smoke for you to see which is the suggestion, height and average height, for you to see how it recognizes these terms that are the same but are a bit different. And then I also added from a S3 bayonet that we had synthetic data. There were we have data collected not in a actual data dictionary, but with questions. I also added these questions for you to see how the droid responds to this. So this is the name I will copy. And then you would get the file, complete it, send that to that file, to that address, sorry, and we would receive the this request. So we would begin the process, and I will show you the different steps for this process. Hopefully it won't give any error. Okay, so this is the droid. This is a new branch that we have created, and these are the different steps that we need to perform. So first, I would upload the file that the user has sent to me. In here, I would add the submitter email address and as court ID. Okay, I will put the same, and then okay, I would upload the file. These first steps usually just take some seconds. So now it has added the file as a Google Sheet. And this is the Google Sheet that we have created. So we have the metadata, and we have the terminology. This is the data dictionary that the user has sent to us. So now we would do this step. That is the actual mapping. This is the harmonization step by the gecko. And I didn't add a lot of terms, so it should be like 30 seconds or something like that. And in here is where we will see the suggestions that the gecko has done. Okay, so it has been done. I see there is one question. I'll try to address it later. So now, if we open the Google Sheet, for the same, and in here we have the suggestions by the gecko. Don't pay attention to this because I've seen that in the test instance, there is some kind of bug that the two first rows doesn't provide the correct the correct suggestion. But so you can see that for this court, it provides an ID for each term. You have the data dictionary, and in here you have the confidence of the suggestions. So for age, it has suggested correctly the age, birth, biological sex, and so on. And for alcohol use history, cancer, the same. For instance, for tobacco use, and you can see that for smoke, it also gets tobacco use. If you have different ways, birth date. Well, in this case, it gives the birthplace also, but this problem of and average height, it describes height, and in here it also should describe height, so that I will put them. And this is birth date. And then, as you can see, in these ones that are just questions, there is not very confident, but it was able to propose tobacco use history for this collection date of smoking status information, and for in your entire life, have you been at least one drink of kind of alcohol? It has been able to also suggest alcohol use history. So just for you to see that the system tries to find which is the best option, even if it's not like two simple words for it. And then what we would do is that we would share this sheet with the Google, the submitter. So they would be able to access also this page, and they would check if they consider that the suggestions are correct. And if a user accesses this, there is this drop-down list. The first terms are the ones that the Gecko has suggested, so that it's easy to find the one that you want. And if not, you can just search. You can search by typing, or search directly any term from the Gecko ontology. So in this case, it will be alcohol use history. And that's it. This is, of course, usually data dictionary are much more complex and much more long. So yes, this is the work that the user would have to do, and we also would check that the information is correctly submitted. So then once everything is done, they would let us know that it has been finalized. And then we just need to do these steps that are steps to prepare this old file, that it will be pushed, transferred into the OLS. Okay, and the last one, that it will be the build the data dictionary. Okay, this step takes a bit more time, so I can show you. This is the, so we have two OLS. This is the main OLS, ontology search site. In here, you can search for the ontologies, and you can find them directly here. In here, there are a big amount of different ontologies, and we created this IHCC ontology site in which we store the harmonizations for the different cores that we have in the atlas. And in here, you can see the Gecko, and this is free to access, and you can see, how is the tree for the different terms. This doesn't have a lot of granularity, so the idea was not to go deep in detail into all the data that a core can contain. It was to have the most important that were considered for this discoverability. So the idea is that as long as we enter new chords using the Gecko, if we see that there are certain terms that need to be added for the harmonization, or that need some more granular term, we can, the idea is to expand this ontology to be more informative if necessary. Okay, let me check this. Okay. And I can show you, for instance, it was this gold standard study. This is what the example that I showed you before, and in here there is the dictionary. And if you go to blood pressure measurements, you can see they have all these terms. And with the Gecko, these terms were linked to blood pressure. So that's how now we know in the gold standard it's easy to find that they contain blood pressure data by machine readable tools. Okay, it should finish soon. So I will check the question in the meantime. Okay, so Christian, yeah, we might contact you to talk about this. I'm not very technical with the process, so I can find other people that can give you a very accurate answer. But I will write down your email, and yeah, we can talk in case we can collaborate.
Yeah, and now I have working microphone. Sorry for that before. I just wanted to reach out. We are a bit more technical on that side. I mean, you are also like it's different aspects, but I didn't want to bother everybody. It's just about there is ways you can specify at user entry, and then you can basically grasp the granularity if you want to. That doesn't mean you need to, but if that's of any interest. So that was my angle at it.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
We will contact you and yeah, talk more about this.
Thank you.
And the question, do I need to fill in all information? No, you don't need to. Let me find. In here, you see the terms that are required and the terms that are optional. So there are some that for which we need the information, for instance, some court IDs and so on. But for others, you don't need to provide all the information. Okay, so yeah, I don't think I need to show all the addresses because now we would just add the address to version control, and then we would like commit, push, go to GitHub. So it's just pushing again, just some buttons. So it won't give you any more information. Just know that this file is then transferred to GitHub, and from there is pushed to the OLS. And once it's in the OLS, the OICR, the people from the Atlas, they can push this core data information and upload it into the Atlas. So tomorrow I will show you the Atlas 10th instance in which we have uploaded this short data dictionary for you to have an idea of what you see in the from a submission like this. And then I will show you also the main Atlas in which you can see the actual data and the codes that are there with all the information. So I think that I will stop here.
Thanks, Carlos. So there are some in the Google folder that Mamana sent to everybody. There are some synthetic data sets, and so if anybody does want to try it out, then you can access those data sets. But the idea is, or you know, with your own cohorts, if you wanted to try it out, because then you'll be able to see, you know, if that was sent to Carlos, and you'll be able to see it sort of uploaded and browsable tomorrow in the Atlas. Are there any additional questions for Carlos or anybody who spoke today who is still on here? So Aiton, Catherine, Isuru, they are all still on, and Carlos. So if there are any questions, if there are any discussions you want to have about data cleaning or anything else that was discussed today. Lauren?
Sure. So I was just wondering, in terms of the 1,000 cohorts initiative, I see that you have like a data availability, which is great. Is there also like a link to how to access the data from the cohort? And then I think it's really interesting that you're working, or it seems that you're based at EMBL-EBI, because at Recorded we also work with EMBL-EBI. And one of the questions that I've had for EMBL-EBI is, how come in kind of the EGA or let's say the COVID-19 data portal, there's no kind of discussion of cohort data. So all the discussion, like the words on the websites that are affiliated with EMBL-EBI's data sharing platforms, whether it's EGA or the COVID-19 data portal, are just related to high dimensional data. And so I'm wondering if you are kind of working with EMBL-EBI to try to, incorporate sharing cohort data through EMBL-EBI. Thanks.
This question is to me, no? I guess. So the EMBL-EBI is working on these different projects. So I'm from EBI. We are working these different projects involved in cohorts. At the moment, for instance, there are some synthetic data sets that are accessible through the EGA. And this direct access to the data that you ask for, this is something that is the idea of the final aim that these projects want to achieve, is that through these systems like the Atlas, that you are able to actually access the data. So this is not possible yet. There are a lot of privacy concerns and a lot of security issues that need to be worked on. But the idea is to be able to provide a secure access, and then so to discover the data, maybe through the Atlas, and then through the Atlas provide a secure access and access the actual data in which you can do these analyses. And the idea is to access them where they are, because the problem is when you need to move data, for instance, from one country to another, that there are a lot of legal issues here. So the idea is to develop the tools, and these projects is what they are doing, develop all these tools that would allow you to do these assays in a federated way remotely directly into the data where it's stored, and you would get directly the results. So you won't like get the data for you and then you do whatever you want on your computer. So this is the main, the final objective that all these projects that work with cohorts are trying to achieve. Because in this way you would analyze at the same time data from different cohorts in different countries with the same types of analysis and so on. So this would be very powerful, of course, for the studies.
So just to add on to that, so I don't work at EBI. I worked there sort of 20 years ago, but I know quite a lot of the work because I'm have been involved in the Alexa project. So I think actually EBI is involved in Alexa, which is the European infrastructure for life sciences, and that group I think is more involved in building these actual platforms. So EBI is the main custodian of data in terms of the repositories like EGA and many of the other databases, but it seems to be other groups that EBI works with that are actually building these platforms. So in the IHCC, actually, we're about to put in a proposal, a funding proposal to extend the Atlas work to actually have, that's discovery, but then, to actually have these data sets sitting in an open platform, an open science platform, where you can then actually access them if you have been authorized, so with the AAI to be able to authorize you to access those. But in most cases, I think it's going to be a federated platform, so it won't be one kind of platform where all the cohorts sit, because of what Carlos mentioned about not being able to move data across borders. but EBI has been very involved, and also particularly through the CINECA project, in building the tools to enable you to find the data sets, get the authorization, and then do federated analysis and move your tools to those different data sets. So what are the ways in which you can sort of work out what you can use data for is that many of these cohorts, particularly in IHCC and also through CINECA, are actually being mapped to DUO, which is the data use ontology, which immediately tells you what you can and can't use the data for in terms of what they're being consented for. And then once you'll be able to search by the data sets that you're allowed to use, find those data sets, and then this should hopefully be information sort of that passes you then on to the DAC or the DBAC or whoever's the access committee, and then the authorization comes back to that platform, and then suddenly that data set sort of appears in your workspace or whatever it is. So these are all being worked on in the background by sort of multiple different groups, and I know EBI has been involved in several of those projects.